fact, Isaac Newton penned more words related to the Bible, and is a religious man, penned more words on the Bible than he ever did on physics. He analyzed Revelations, and he analyzed chronology. He has a whole book called, Biblical Chronology, trying to match it up with, and it's kind of torturous there, because not all of it can you find other secondary sources. He's a good scientist. He's not relying on the one source. So everybody who's ever tried to make a prediction of unknown phenomena from a religious text has failed. So as a scientist, you do what's practical. You say, okay, I'm not going to try to understand the universe from the Bible or from any other document. What people do is they find something that science has discovered, then they go back in their religious text and sort of rummage through it, and they find, well, here's a passage that I can interpret in a way that matches that. I say, okay, why didn't you do that before I made the discovery? Well, because you couldn't interpret it that way, because you had no understanding of how to interpret it. For example, there is no reference in either the Old or the New Testament, speaking of the Judeo-Christian religion, there's no reference to Earth as a three-dimensional object. Every single reference to Earth in either the Old or the New Testament references Earth as a flat place. Maps drawn of the region, go into the Vatican, pre-Columbus map, they're all flat. Jerusalem sitting right in the center. Of course, where were the maps drawn? In Jerusalem, right? So you're in the center. That's natural. That's how we conduct it's the hubris of life. So Galileo was the first, as far as I can read, also a religious man. They were all religious. He was the first to recognize that the Bible fails in this context. So he famously is quoted as saying, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. And so people who have ignored that edict since then have basically wasted huge tracts of their professional scientific life. The religious scientists who are out there, some famous ones include Francis Collins, who's head of the Human Genome Project. Okay, Nobel laureate. I mean, these are highly ranking scientists who pray to God, pray to Jesus. All right. He's not saying Earth is 6,000 years old. He's not ascribing to intelligent design. He's not saying any of that. So religion to him is not a source of insight into the operations of the natural world. Religion to him is a source of his spiritual enlightenment and fulfillment. And he's just fine with that. So the conflict between science and religion, when it has ever arisen, has been because religion has tried to make a statement about the physical world, and it's turned out to be wrong. If they stop making statements about the physical world, no one's going to, fine, go on. There's no issue here. But the moment you make a statement, the moment you're going to say, let's pray to make the person better, we can test that. Go come in the room, we'll test it. Okay? Make sure you correct for placebos and do the experiment by test for it. Right? There's some tests in England. What do they do all the time? They God save the Queen, right? They did a test back before Queen Elizabeth. God save the King, pray for the King, and all this. So they said so many prayers for the King. Do the kings live longer? Do they live longer than the rest of the population? You correct for wealth and other things. It turns out they don't. Millions of people praying for the people. Millions. You think that would have added to something? So if you try to intersect with the physical world, there are issues there. That's all I'm saying. Now, to put this in context, there is no tradition of scientists, or atheists for that matter, picketing outside of churches saying that might not necessarily be true. That's no tradition. That's not. You don't see scientists banging on the church door, or the Sunday school door, telling the preacher to put quantum mechanics in the sermon. Religious freedoms are a fundamental part of the identity of what it is to be American. Right? cannot tell you what religion you have to be, which means you can be any religion you want, and no law can prevent that. So the sanctity of religion as practiced in America is deep in our culture. And by the way, that's kind of what created a lot of that early melting pot. People who could not practice the religion they wanted in their own countries. So they had to go to a place where they had religious freedoms. Where was that? Here in America. So you had all different religions gathered in one place. Hey, that was like end of the 1800s, early 1900s. America rose up out of its Civil War doldrums to become the leading nation of the world. You know the last time that happened on such a great scale? 1,000 years ago in Baghdad. In Baghdad, doors were open, roads were open to Jews, Muslims, Christians, doubters. Today we would call them atheists. All were invited to sit at the same table. There was no threat of persecution, no threat of beheadings, no threat of death. Everybody brought their philosophies together, cross-pollinating ideas. What rose out of that period was the most fertile period in the history of human civilization, called the Golden Era of Islam, 300-year period. Algebra was invented in that period. That's an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. Our numeral system are called Arabic numerals. You ever stop to wonder why that's the case? You ever wonder? Do you realize, George, I'm sorry I'm giving a really long answer to your question. All lined up. But you started. September 11th. All right, I live 4 blocks from the World Trade Center, so that's my backyard. To us, it's your country, it's my back fucking yard. Okay? So, 2001. So what happens a few weeks later? George Bush stands, was it in the Rose Garden or steps to the Capitol? One of them, I forgot which. He's trying to distinguish we from they. And he says, our God, first, the God of Islam is the same God as the God of Christianity. It's the same God. Everybody uses the same Old Testament there. So he got that wrong. But hold that aside for the moment. He says, our God, loosely quoting biblical Genesis, he says, our God is the God who named the stars. And I'm thinking, no. It's like, wait. Now this is before I was on his Rolodex. I could have saved him from himself. So he said, our God's the God who saved him. And I said, like, W. 2/3 of all stars in the night sky that have names have Arabic names. Arabic names. Did he know this? He couldn't have, because he wouldn't have uttered that sentence. Our God named the stars. All the stars have Arabic names. I don't think he meant that, okay? So, in that period, all their advances in engineering and agriculture, navigation. It's the navigation advances that led to the naming of the stars. So, all that happened in that period. And then it all stopped. There was a Muslim cleric who rose to power in the 1100s. Okay? 800 to 1100, around there. His name is Al-Ghazali. A scholar, actually, who before then no one knew how to be a good Muslim. Everyone was interpreting the Quran according to their own ways. He rose up and said, I studied this, and I'm learned it, and I'm an expert, and here's what you need to do to be a good Muslim. His role was similar to St. Augustine. St. Augustine codified what it was to be a good Christian in the day. How to burn the witch, how often to pray, how often to go to church. The rules were kind of set up, all right? They weren't all set up immediately on the appearance of the New Testament or when that was assembled. So, somebody had to put it together. He put it together for Islam. And under his edicts included that the manipulation of numbers is the work of the devil. Not only that, and you can still hear it to this day in Islam, there is the premise that whatever happens is the will of Allah, the will of God. So if I trip on the steps, that's the will of God. If something falls off a count, that's the will of God. If everything happens as the will of God, then where's the curiosity to understand the phenomenon? It's gone. In fact, from 1100 to this day, from 800 to 1100, more books gathered around the world were translated into Arabic than have been translated into Arabic since then. Why does that matter? Because if you translate books, you're learning what other people are thinking who are not you. That's the gathering of new ideas around the table. That's how you eke out. That's the melting pot of early America. Why is America why are we the ingenious ones in the world? We basically invented the 20th century. Basically. Right? How did that come about? Because of the juxtaposition, the cross-pollination of ideas. So, he rose to power. Islam never recovered. There's 1.3 billion Muslims in the world, and in the past 113 years, you can ask, how many Nobel Prizes in the sciences have they won? 1.5. Maybe 2. Like the half is like was in economics, okay? So, how many Jews in the world? There's like 15 million tops, okay? Possibly as low as 12, but somewhere in there. There's a whole other philosophy among the Jews towards learning, towards understanding what others are thinking, participating in that. The Jews have won 25% of all the Nobel Prizes in the sciences. If you ratio those two, the impact factor is like a factor of 3,000. What you've done as a percentage of your population in the world. So things such as how insular is your community matter to your capacity to discover. History tells us. So, now I don't know why I went on that aside, but getting back to your point, is there God in the universe? I don't know. But what I do know is every time someone tells me how their God behaves, or what is the nature of their God, they'll say things like, God is good. God looks after us. Okay? God cares. And what I would translate to God is interested in your health and longevity. What else would caring mean if not that, I would think? That's a fair interpretation of such a claim, I would think. All right, I look around the universe and I find that Earth dreams up ways of killing us. Earth wants us dead every opportunity it has. An earthquake in Haiti, 250,000 people died. Tsunami in Indonesia, 250,000 people died. Hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes, lightning strikes. The list goes on, and that's just Earth trying to kill you. Now you've got the universe trying to kill you. Asteroids, gamma ray bursts. Do you realize that 98% of all species of life that has ever lived on Earth is now extinct? That doesn't look like a God who protects its life. That's all I'm saying. So if your God is okay with slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people, then I have no argument with your God. Because that's the evidence, that's what the evidence shows. By the way, that's the God of the Old Testament. God killed everybody who wasn't on the ark. Right? So if that's the conduct of your God, there's plenty of evidence for that. But if your God is a benevolent God, I simply don't see it. I look at all the evidence, not the selective evidence. So I don't see it. So, but that's me. I mean, maybe you've got other filters at work. So when I look at you, I just don't. But I don't peddle that. You asked me that. Did I lead off? I come here saying, I'm going to tell these people, no. You're asking. Okay. So yeah, the more I see the universe, the less intelligent it looks. So that's the answer I should give.